So 1 year ago today, my mom, adopted mom, passed away, and I haven't talked about it much online publicly other than the day that it happened. And I think it's important. It's been a year, and now I want to talk about it and I want to share the story. It's something I haven't talked about. That part of my life I have not talked about online publicly, but it's a big part of who I am, and I think it's important to share. And I figured on the 1 year anniversary, it's time to talk about it. So hey everybody, welcome back. This is a different video than usual, not necessarily advocacy related, but it does tie into kind of who I am today and where I came from. And I want to talk about it. I think that it's time. It's been a year since she passed away, but also I've never really talked about aspects of my life online and part of where I come from and who I am and the things that really made me me that are outside of kind of my chronic illness. All of that really does tie into everything. So I want to talk about it. So 1 year ago today, my adopted mom, who was actually my grandma, I call her Mimi, passed away. She passed away from a liver condition. And, she was an incredible person, somebody who I loved dearly and missed dearly. She was a huge part of my life. And I say adopted mom because she adopted me and my younger sister when I was around 12, I believe. And so my little sister would have been around 9 and 10. But she and my granddad adopted us because we needed it. And there's, a lot of things that happened in my life that made me who I am. And this is one of them. So growing up, I typically have always lived with my grandma, my Mimi, because my mom dealt with some mental health issues, still does. And they were just, it wasn't as stable as home as we needed. And so my grandma, my Mimi, stepped in and took care of us. And as we, got older, we kind of lived with our mom and dad a little bit. But for the most part, she and my granddad were the most stable people in our lives and who stepped in to take care of us. And so there was a time where my mom went to prison. And so at that point, my Mimi had custody of me and my younger sibling, and there was a decision made for them to go ahead and to adopt us because it made a lot of things easier from a legal standpoint. Just gave some more protection to my little sister and I, and gave us that extra stability and things that we need and access to certain things that we needed. And so my mom and dad signed over custody as well as, the adoption aspect of that. And so we were adopted. And so it wasn't anything much different. We had lived with my grandparents already. My mom had dealt with a lot of mental health stuff and had worked on it but had made some decisions and got put into prison, and my dad, moved away. And so without my Mimi and my granddad, I don't know where me and my little sister would have ended up. I don't know what would have happened if they didn't step in. And her kids were older, like my uncle and aunt, they were all older. They were out of the house. So, she was taking in some younger kids. We had already been with her for several years, but, kids to continue to raise kids at that stage in her life. And I can't imagine what that decision was like, but I know that she never thought twice about it. I know that she wanted to do it, and she would not have let us end up in the system somewhere or with anyone else. She would have fought tooth and nail for me and my siblings, and I know that to this day. But she adopted us, and we officially kind of became her children. We were already her grandchildren. She already had custody of us, so it wasn't much different, but it just kind of made it official. We didn't take their last name or anything. We kept our last name. But, it was something that played a huge part of my life and growing up. But, they adopted us and began to just really continue to take care of us in a way that we really needed at the time. And if you know anything about my Mimi, she was genuinely a selfless person. She would do anything for anyone, and she wasn't perfect. None of us are. She would tell you that there was a lot of things that happened and so much growing up, but she would have done anything for us, anything for anybody. She was a teacher. She taught all her life at a Christian school. She had been doing it for over 20 something years. And over the last several years, she had, as she got sick, progressively got sicker, she left and had to take care of herself and stuff like that. And that was hard for her. I know that it was, because it was something that she loved doing. She loved the kids that she taught, and she taught so many people and did so much for a lot of kids. And again, was very selfless in the way that she did it. And I know that was hard for her, especially, to give up something that she was so passionate about and had been doing her entire life. But the one thing about kind of my Mimi, when I was going through my health stuff, and so it was really around 12 or 13 when I started to get sick with what at the time we didn't know was Crohn's disease. And it would be 5 years after that initial kind of me getting sick for us to get a diagnosis. But she was the one who fought for me. She was the one who took me to the doctors, and she was the one who would take me to the emergency room. We spent countless times in the emergency room with me being sick and doubled over and having the symptoms of Crohn's that nobody could really figure out. But she was my biggest advocate, and that's what I needed. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I ended up in the hospital with what they thought was appendicitis, and she was there, and then living with and unknowingly living with a rare bone disease as well. I broke a lot of bones, so we were dealing with that as well. But she fought for me and continued to push so that we could eventually get an answer. But she was the one who would take me to all these appointments, and I felt obviously very comfortable telling her what was going on. Like, I remember the first time that I started bleeding from Crohn's disease after bowel movements, and I told her, and I was freaking out, and she was like, chill out, let's call the doctor and let's kind of get a plan in place. And so she really taught me how to kind of advocate for myself in a way that I didn't know and didn't really know how to do. But because of that, because of her, I mean, it really kind of shaped the way that I approach my own healthcare now and the way that I advocate for myself and who I am. But I remember when I was going through everything with my initial trying to get diagnosed with Crohn's disease, I was 16, 17 at the time, and she was taking me to these appointments. I remember she was there for my first GI doctor's visit, and we talked about getting colonoscopies and the EGDs and the pill cams and the MRIs and all of that. And she's, was okay, and she set everything up and made sure I made all my appointments. I had to do the colonoscopy prep, and she helped me with that, and all of the prep and the no solid foods or anything like that. Like, she was the kind of staple in my health journey. And when I was diagnosed and got my diagnosis, I just started college. I was 17, and the person who called me to tell me I was diagnosed was her. So the GI doctor had called her, and she wanted to be the one to tell me the diagnosis. So I got a call from her midday at school, and she was like, hey, buddy, I heard from the GI doctor. We got your stuff back. They got your stuff back, and they told us that you have Crohn's disease. She said, don't freak out. Don't stress out. We'll handle it. But I did just want to tell you what they told me and the diagnosis that you have. And she told me that she loved me and we would figure it out together. And I remember that phone call, because you remember the moment you get diagnosed with something. And I remember that phone call and it coming from her, and it I was like, okay, and I went to class and then went home and we talked about it, and we had some follow-up appointments to do for that. And so she went to me with all of my follow-up appointments for that. And one of the things that I vividly remember as well is that I initially got put on a bunch of pills for my disease, things for nausea, things for stomach like spasms, things for the heartburn, and then the medicine to treat the Crohn's, which is pills and steroids. And she was the one who put all my medicine out for the week in the little pill containers, and she would wake me up in the morning and say, hey, take this medication, like, here's your pills. And it really just kept it all in place for me and to help me really manage that, because it was a lot. I was 17, I just started college, and they're telling me I got to take 15 pills a day and do all this stuff. And then I got hospitalized not right after, but about a month after I was diagnosed, because I just wasn't getting better. And I spent about a week and a half in the hospital. And she was there. She spent the first couple nights with me, and then other people kind of tag teamed in and out to stay with me and keep me company. And she came and saw me every day, and it was, you know, she was the best person for me in that moment and did so much for me during that really turbulent time of diagnosis. And I'm forever grateful for that. And I lean on that a lot, and the way that she advocated for me in the doctor's office and to get the treatment that I needed while I was at the hospital. And I just, you know, it really shaped who I am and the advocate that I am. And so she was just the staple in my life. And so when I was older, a little older, 19-ish, you know, the truth is she and I, we had a little bit of falling out. You know, I was 19 and in college and wanted to do some things and stuff like that. And we just kind of butted heads, and I, you know, moved out for a little bit and went to college. And, you know, eventually after time, you know, she was my mom. I mean, like, we made up and stuff like that. And I hate that. I hate talking about that time because I was just stubborn as well. And that's on me. But, you know, it is what it is, growing up and being, you know, 18, 19 and trying to be independent and all of that. And but she never let up or anything like that. She continued to reach out. We talked and stuff like that. It wasn't like a huge falling out kind of thing. But, you know, we had our moments. You know, I loved her, she loved me, and we butted heads. And as I got older, she was still a staple in my life. And, you know, at my wedding, you know, obviously she was there and she did a lot for that. And I loved her so much. I still do, obviously, but she was so great. And again, not perfect, and we didn't agree on everything. And we had some deep conversations about personal beliefs and things that I believed in and wanted to do, and how I wanted to shape my life and things like that, things that you have as you get older. But she never wavered in her kind of beliefs or anything like that. But she was always there for me. She always checked on me. Even as a married adult, you know, she'd ask if she needed to take me to surgery if I needed. She did take me to surgery a few times when my wife needed to be with the kids. And she was always there, even as I got older and needed somebody to help out. And the last few years of her life, as she got sicker, you know, my family life, my mom with her mental health issues, there was a lot going on from a family standpoint. And, you know, as I had my kids and life got busy, you know, I didn't see her as much as I wanted to, and we had some different disagreements about some things. And so, you know, I didn't see her as much as I wanted to, but we talked a lot. And, you know, I don't want to talk about the bad times. You know, those shaped me, and the conversations I had with her about personal beliefs and ways that I wanted to, you know, raise my kids and things like that. You know, those were good conversations that helped me learn a lot and helped me figure things out. And she was always very, very informative and open in that. But she was really incredible. And I hated when she got sick, obviously, and we didn't know the extent of it either. I mean, she didn't let on quite as much, and I had just had twins, my wife and I, and so there was a lot going on. There was a lot going on. We were trying to figure out kind of what was going on with her and stuff like that, and she really just took a turn really quickly, and we didn't know kind of how serious it was. And, you know, and she got to meet my kids my twins when she was in the hospital and stuff. And she was such an amazing person, and I miss her so much. I hate that she won't get to see my kids grow up. You know, they're still little and they won't have her in her life. You know, I will obviously, I tell them about her and things like that, but she shaped so much of who I am and did so much for me and my sisters when we were younger and as we got older. And she never wavered in anything. She would have done it a million times again if it meant taking care of us. But she taught me how to advocate for myself. She was there through all my diagnosis, my diagnoses, because I ended up being diagnosed with a couple of things. She was there for my first surgery. She was there for my first hospital stay. She was at my wedding and was there when we had my first kid. And, it was hard. The hardest thing that we've ever had to do was say goodbye to her. And it's been a year. It's been a year now, which is crazy. And I miss her every day. But I think, it's important to talk about. I want to remember her and talk about her because she shaped so much of who I am as a patient advocate. I would not be doing the advocacy work that I do without her, because she really helped me in those early days advocate for myself and get the care that I needed. And because of that, it made me a stronger person. And as I had to take ownership of my own health care as I got older, became 18 and had to start making these decisions, I still relied on her some, but it was because of her that I'm the advocate that I am today. And she always believed in me, and I got a master's degree, and she was at my graduations and all of that. And she was just a wonderful person. And I have not talked about her a lot. I don't talk about that side of my life a lot. Just because it's just different stuff. But I think it's important to talk about the impact that she had on my advocacy, the impact she had on my life, and will continue to have as I get older. Even though she's no longer here, I will still think about the things that she did to help me take ownership of my health and my advocacy. And I know that she was proud of the work that I did as a patient advocate to help people. And, she told me all the time how proud she was. And that's something really, really incredible to me, because she got to be involved in some of that, to see the things that I did. But I miss her a lot. I do. But she did so much for me, and I wouldn't be here without her. I would not be the advocate that I am today without her. And I hope that she knew that. But yeah, that's, I was adopted, and she kind of helped shape me into who I am. So that is a little bit of the story of my background. I don't, a lot of people don't know that I was adopted by my grandparents. They don't know kind of how all of that happened, what happened. I don't talk too much about it, but I think it's important to share. It's important to share the aspects of our lives that shape us, that not only they sometimes directly shape us, sometimes they indirectly shape us, but I would not be the patient advocate today without the stuff that she did when I was diagnosed and to help me in those moments. So I wanted to share that, and I hope that people can relate to that. But she was an incredible person, and I miss her very much. And I hope that she knows that I wouldn't be here today and the advocate that I am without her. So thank you for watching. I know this was a different video, but I wanted to talk about it. I want this to be out there for people to know kind of where I came from and how I became the advocate. And a lot of it was because of her. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.